Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio, and this is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. It's February 24th, Wednesday morning, 5:30 in the morning here, Calgary, Alberta time, and I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that you can be here, and I sure hope that you can get something out of the show. We're on for 15 minutes, and we're just going to look again at understanding child maltreatment and juvenile delinquency, except for we're going to take a look at part 2, which is foundations for effective responses. And we spent the last couple mornings looking at understanding child maltreatment and juvenile delinquency, the research that was by Kathy Spatz-Whittam, and now we're going to look at part 2, which is Foundations for Effective Responses by Janet Wigg, JD and MSW. I'm not sure what those stand for, what those initials stand for, but you can get this information at www.cwla.org, or just type into your browser Understanding Child Maltreatment and Juvenile Delinquency, and it'll come right up. That's how I found it. I was looking for information on juvenile delinquency and the link between abuse or neglect or child abuse, neglect, maltreatment, etc., and the link between that and juvenile delinquency, because, growing up I saw a lot of that, and even, experienced that in my own home, and so I thought, well, it's quite interesting, and I know there has to be a link to it, so I thought I may as well just get into it and start looking at it. It's a subject and a topic that I'm very interested in, because I study child rights, human rights, and I'm a part-time student at MRU, and I'm just in between courses right now, taking a break. So yeah, I'm glad that you can be here. And I'm not a professional. I don't hold any professional counseling certificates or therapy certificates. This show is not to replace counseling or professional help at all. I'm just a person who sits on Blog Talk Radio to bring information to people. I believe that the only way we're going to ever really make a difference in the child abuse issues and human rights abuse issues is by getting involved. And if everybody gets involved and raises their voice and does whatever they can in whatever way they can, it's bound to have an effect, and it's bound to really push for the positive changes that need to happen, right? Instead of complaining, because I know I was doing that before. A couple of years ago, all my life sat around and complained really to myself about what was going on in the world, and then I thought, why am I just sitting here when I have a voice, I can use it? And for all the people out there who can't use their voice, the children, the abused, the people that are oppressed, we need to stand up for them, and we need to make some real serious positive changes in this world. And I thought, well, why am I sitting on the couch? If I believe that, then I have to get involved. And so that's why I'm doing this, and continuing on, and I'm, plan to spend the rest of my life doing this. So this Blog Talk Radio show, I don't know how long I'll do, but I'll just do it as long as I can, and as long as people are finding it useful and helpful. So yeah, it's not a professional show, and the subjects of abuse are very sensitive, so I just ask the people who are under the age of 18 to please have someone, listen to this show with you, just to make sure it's something you should be listening to, because it's always good. We have a parent that really cares about us enough to care about what we're listening to. That is great. There's so many online crazy people. I know all about online safety, and there's so much garbage out there and crazy people trying to do terrible things to children. I know, it happened to me. So I just care about children, and that's why I do what I do. The show is ultimately about you and adult survivors. So, but I think it's very important, just because you might have questions, and I don't want anyone to leave the show feeling like they just upset and don't know where to go for further information. So if you're a young person under the age of 18, make sure you get someone to listen to this with you, a teacher, counselor, a parent, someone in your family who you trust and who has a good head on their shoulders. And then they can help you with questions. And the show can cause triggering. Now, today's topic, I don't know, it could. And so if you're listening to this and you think you might be triggered by it, you're an adult survivor, and you think the information is just not going to be good for you, then make sure you turn the show off, because it's just, we want to stay safe and healthy. And I'm, all about prevention, awareness, education, prevention of child abuse, and a survivor myself. And I know that the topics can be rather upsetting. So if you're not in a safe place and you're just not that far along in your healing journey, make sure that you know what you can listen to. It's very, very important that we know this. So yeah, we'll just get right into the topic here. Part 2, Understanding Child Maltreatment and Juvenile Delinquency, Foundations for Effective Responses. And I'm just reading right from the page. As the connection between child maltreatment and future crime and delinquency is established, the challenge to policymakers, professionals, and the community at large is to design the most effective responses. The responses can be seated in the various prevention and intervention programs that are familiar to the child welfare and juvenile justice systems, and additional opportunities exist for the development of responses that require these two systems to work in new ways together. Critical to this challenge is the embrace of common goals and a common responsibility to interrupt the trajectory of juvenile and criminal offending that seems to be the destiny for at least some of these victims of child abuse and neglect. This is Janet Wink writing here. This part describes an array of program and system efforts that could serve as a foundation to develop effective responses that address the connection between child maltreatment and juvenile delinquency. First, it reviews particular program efforts and their reported effects, and the risk factors used to identify children and families for a particular program or strategy, and the assessment practices that accompany these efforts. Second, it discusses what these program efforts have in common and what the implications are for the child welfare and juvenile justice systems. And third, it describes the broad systematic reform that needs to take place to prevent delinquency involving the integration of the child welfare, juvenile justice, and related systems. Finally, it provides examples of policies, procedures, and program efforts to link the child welfare and juvenile justice systems. So then it goes on to say programmatic responses to prevent child abuse, neglect, and delinquency. A continuum of prevention intervention programs can serve as a foundation on which to build effective responses to prevent crime and delinquency. This continuum begins with child abuse and neglect prevention, continues with early intervention to prevent delinquency, and culminates in intervention programs that respond to incidents of child abuse and neglect, early onset of delinquent behavior, and serious juvenile offending. Because it is difficult to predict with certainty which abused and neglected children will become tomorrow's delinquents, the front line of delinquency prevention should be the prevention of child abuse and neglect itself. Absolutely agree with that 100%. Who's to say whether my family, my brothers would have gone the way that they did had they not grown up in an abusive home. They might have still gone on to commit crimes and do drugs and just be, kind of a, do out there doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, because the studies say, the percentages are, and these were old percentages, but when these studies were done, 21% of abused and neglected children were likely to commit a serious violent crime, compared to the other study groups where there was no abuse. So, there is a link to that whole issue of child abuse and neglect, maltreatment, to juvenile delinquency. So that's why we just need to stop and really prevent child abuse and neglect from the very beginning, because I feel that a lot of the stuff we see in the paper today with a lot of these people who are abusing their own kids, people who they're killing their children, right? And we see this in the paper, and you have to think, what kind of a life was that parent living before they had children, and what kind of a life were they living as a child? It's such a serious issue, child abuse and neglect, and we really have to really do something very proactive and very soon, like right now, to get people involved and make some changes. All of our voices together just can't help but make a difference. And so, whether we were abused as children or not, just has absolutely nothing to do with it. We all need to stand up if we want to see a real change in society. And it doesn't mean that it's just going to be able to completely wipe it out, because there's no such thing as a perfect world. But I think that the more people standing up and talking about this, the more the chances of that happening are better, because right now nobody wants to talk about abuse, and the only time you ever see anything about child abuse and neglect and is when it's too late, and it's in the paper, it's on the news, and it's too late because of some tragic instances where the children were killed, or the child was killed, or died from injuries or maltreatment or neglect due to abuse. And so we don't want to see that stuff. We don't want to see that in the paper. We want to stop this before it gets that far. And so how are we going to do this? There's so many children out there right now suffering abuse of all kinds all around the world, not just North America. But I thought, hey, we got to focus on North America too. I'm interested in international community development, very interested in international human rights, but I also think, hey, it has to start in our own home country. It has to start in our own home, and it has to start in our hearts. So we all, everyone is going to have to sort of watch out for those kids that are in your life. If you work with children, don't turn a blind eye. You suspect abuse, you report it. You do the right thing, because what happens to these children if they live through this experience, I'm a prime example. They can go on to do, violent acts, criminal activities, doing drugs and hurting themselves and hurting other people. They can go on to abuse their own children, which perpetuates the cycle. And so this needs to stop. We are going to have to take responsibility for this. I don't have any children, but I was a child and I was abused, and I know what it's like for people to turn a blind eye and just walk off. And even today, there's family members that actually refuse to acknowledge what happened. And, that's okay. Whatever, if they can live with that, that's all right. But I can't, and it really bothers me. We all need to get involved and stand up, and in whatever capacity that we can, whatever way that is. It doesn't matter what way it is, whether it's just being an advocate, or if you work with children, or if you're in the lawmaking process or whatever, because everybody's got their place in life, right? Whatever we can do to make a difference, that's what we need to do. So, support groups that are out there being very proactive with child abuse prevention and child abuse awareness and education. I think that's a very big one, and also supporting groups that are that specifically deal with child abuse. The different organizations out there who are actually working with the children. And, it's just so important to get involved. We just can't close our eyes anymore. We cannot just close our eyes and walk off and say, oh, well, it's too bad. And then when we see these articles in the paper, another child's been murdered at the hands of their caregiver, or, they died from injuries resulting from abuse in the home, then everybody cries about it. Look what those people did to their children. Well, what are we going to do to stop it? This is the stuff that we all, as a society, have to start taking a look at. And of course we don't have the answers, but that's what I'm saying. We have to find the answers. We're going to have to come up with this stuff. And I don't know why there isn't in every single city, a huge think tank group sitting around thinking, how are we going to do this? How, because it's obvious you can't go into someone's home and just start, are you abusing your children? But the whole issue is teachers, people who look after children, daycares, teachers, anyone who has access to a child really should be trained and aware of all the signs. And I bet you a lot of them are, and probably most of them probably have to be before they can get their positions, right? But as far as, doing anything about it, really, that these abused kids are out there are showing up to these places with bruises, signs of emotional neglect, signs of emotional abuse, and these are the signs that everyone should be aware of. I know if I was working with children, I would be on the ball, knowing all the signs, knowing how to report it, and this is so important for all of us to know, right? We want to save children. We want to save all of our children from, in this generation and the next generation. So that's why, it's just so important to me, and it sits right at the very core of my being. So, I hope we can find the answers. I really do. I'm not sitting there playing the blame game. I want to be able to find the answers too, right? And so that's what I'm saying. We all need to take a look at this and see what we can do. I'm so happy you could join me. We got about a minute left, and I'm the Canada Regional Director of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Volunteer, and I love Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and they have a great website. You can check it out, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, and they have great information on there on what to look for, the signs of abuse, all the different types of abuse, and what the signs and symptoms are, how to report abuse, how to get help as a parent if you're having issues and you think you might be abusing your child, but you're just not sure, and you need to help maybe to find some coping resources. This is so important because we all know that this sort of thing happens and it's very stressful. So there's so much good information on there. Please check out their website. And, I thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back on tonight, 9:30 Mountain Standard Time. Child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention is up to us. And until then, I hope you have a great day. And just hang in there, keep the hope alive, and we'll see if we can find the answers together and make a real difference for the children today and for the children, tomorrow and the next generation and the next generation. And if we all stand up and get involved, it has to happen. It's like a ball in motion stays in motion. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I thank you for your support and for everything that you're doing to help raise a hand to help a child. And thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Take care, okay?